I'm just going to go back for a second. Still, while we were doing the first season of Newlywed Game, and it wasn't my ego so much, it was my naivete. I was fired. Why was I fired? First year you come out to LA, when you're from New Jersey, all your friends want to come out and visit because, you're going to take many, everybody wants to go to Disneyland, whatever. They want to see Hollywood. And now all of a sudden they can get in to see TV shows because, where Newlywed Game is taping, we were on stage 5 pretty much for all of season 1. This is at Sunset Studios, which at that point was called the KTLA Studios. Prior to that, it was the old Warner Brothers Studios where Betty Davis, Jimmy Cagney, et cetera, had done all of their shows. But while we were taping the Newlywed Game, we didn't have a dedicated stage because even though we were doing 175 shows, we weren't taping every single day. So we would have to load our set out. Donnie and Marie's show was taping at the same time, so Donnie and Marie would load into our show, into our stage. And the nice thing about that, when you share a crew, it's the same crew for both Donnie and Marie's show. And so, whoever was on the show, for me, when I knew that Lucy was going to be on the show, I walked on stage and, it was no surprise because, again, all the camera guys, audio guys, everybody knew, oh, it's David. But Lucy didn't know. And for whatever reason, there were no stage managers on the show. She was dressed all in black, she had black tights. She was doing a dance routine. And she was done. And she came over and started talking to me and whoever else I was with, thinking, of course, that we were on the show. And it was so neat. And I was talking to her. I never met Lucy before. I was to meet her again later. Bob Hope, same thing. Different with Bob was instead of parking in the parking lot, Bob would pull up right to the Newlywed Game set, which was also Don and Marisha. And he would park there purposely because everybody was waiting to get in. And this was the thing many people may not know about Bob Hope. Bob loved interacting with his fans. Before he went on stage, he would spend like 45 minutes out just talking to the people that are waiting to go see him, not just sign autographs. He would talk to them and hang out. And, it was kind of shocking. Kind of like George Burns, who I will get to later on. So that was kind of neat with the Newlywed Game. But of course, I lost my track of thought.
Talking about dating game, and you're talking about you getting fired.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That, huh? So again, I will say, I'm meeting celebrities and such, and now it's time. The Gong Show is doing a wrap party. And my friend Jim Schlosser, who I mentioned earlier, best friend since 4th grade, Jim comes out to visit me. We didn't go to Disneyland. And I took him to the Gong Show wrap party. Now, I'd never been to a wrap party, but nor had I at that point. Maybe I'd been to the Gong Show set a couple of times because they shot at NBC. And again, we're at Sunset Studios in Hollywood. NBC is in Burbank. I forget where the party was, but for whatever reason, we got our food and I had Jim and I sit down at a table with the Gong Show stars, as it were, the panelists, JP Morgan, Jamie Farr, I think it was Artie Johnson. I don't know what was wrong with me. Maybe I was high. I don't know. We smoked a lot of grass back then. Everybody, except Chuck. I'll say this, whereas the Gong Show staff, the Newlywed Game staff, nobody drank, but occasionally we get high together and such. Never, ever during the course of the show, nobody ever got high on stage, ever. But on off days or after work, you would do that kind of stuff. And so I took Jim in and we're sitting there with Artie. And unfortunately, because they didn't know why we were sitting there, Jamie Farr said, "Hey, great job on the show." Now, Jim is a doctor. Okay. But again, they assumed that because we were sitting with them, that we had worked on the series. And now Chuck is there too. And I still haven't figured out, I shouldn't be sitting at this table. I should be sitting 20 tables away. So we're all sitting there. And JP Morgan's complimenting my friend Jim. Wow, you really did a great job this season. And Jim's just kind of sitting there. Fast forward to the next day, Mike Metzger in the office, Mike says, David, Chuck fired you. I said, really? And I wasn't shocked. I was disappointed. I said, any chance I could talk to him? And he said, no, I don't think you should. I said, well, what the heck? So I went down to Chuck's office. Chuck had a rather long office because he had just an immense conference table, because occasionally we would get the entire Gong Show staff and the entire Newlywed Game staff, but even though they were on different sides of the hall, when we were all together, it was a lot of people. And Chuck was all alone in there, which he liked to do. Chuck was very much a loner and a quiet guy. Again, on TV, he's big Chuck Barris, but on Newlywed Game and Dating Game, I was big David Greenfield, not little shy, stuttering, lisping David Greenfield. So I said, Chuck, thanks for hiring me. I had a great time, and you're really a good guy, and I had a great time, so thank you. And I think I shook his hand. I'm not sure, but I made about 4 steps out. I said, David, I overreacted. No problem, and you're hired. And that was it. That was the only fight I ever had on the show. So back to Dating Game. So now it's my job, of course, to take. Larry Goddard. I told you that Mike had said, take him under your wing. He's going to be gone. Well, at the end of the season, okay, he's supposed to go back to college. He decided, nah, I'm going to drop out of college and I'm going to stay here. And at this point, he was no longer a thorn in my side. He was a friend. And I said, okay, fine. So they decided that Larry would be with all the guys on the Dating Game. He was Chuck's godson, and he was good enough to brief the guys, and still is. And he's working today, and a very nice guy. And talk about learning, on the job training. He started to pick stuff up. Larry ultimately wound up being the model on the $1.98 beauty show. Okay, if we ever get there. So Larry would be with the guys, and I'd be with the Dating Game girls. Now, just to give you a major difference between the shows, we had to have different call times for the girls and the guys, because there was no way we could have them all meet. So we would have one parking lot about 4 blocks away from the studio in one direction. We'd have the guy parking lot in the other direction, also 3 or 4 blocks away, and we'd have different call times. The guys wouldn't need as much time to get dressed and get makeup, so they'd have a later call time. And they'd always, as they'd be coming in, I didn't bring them in, but the other contestant coordinators would, they'd always be searching and looking, and any girl that the guy saw, they'd think, hey, is she one of the girls? Like, that's going to matter, because ultimately, when they go on the show. So prior to that, and this was a nice thing about Dating Game, the girls would come in for their interviews, and they would spend 20 minutes with me. Okay, then they go in, of course, for Mike and Ellen, and they spend about 10 minutes doing that. And then I would say goodbye, and I'll see you at the studio. So they knew me. So as soon as they get to the studio, they would aggregate towards me because I was the guy that briefed them. They assumed that I was the guy that got them on the show, which in some cases I did. And so I was always with the girls, and they were unbelievably comfortable with me. And to the point where some of them, when they were getting dressed, they would actually get undressed in front of me. It was just kind of a natural thing. And again, it was the 70s, and it wasn't like they were coming on to me, although many did. And I'd lie if I didn't admit that, yes, after the show, I did.
You dated a few.
I dated many Dating Game girls after they were on the show. I also dated many Newlywed Game wives after they had been on the show, because on the way out from the Newlywed Game, remember, they were newlyweds and not all of them lasted. So I'd say, hey, if you ever get a divorce, call me up. And many did. In fact,
literally called you after they got divorced.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't know who, which one got a divorce or whatever, so, but yeah, I would get calls and, hi, this is Dana, whoever. And yeah, hey, you want to, and, I'd have to look them up, figure out who they were. And then, yeah, I'd say, okay, I would go out with them. And I actually wound up living with 2 of the newlywed wives. I'm still single though. So what does that say? Anyway, so So once we got all the dating game kids in, again, I'm with the girls. I never, at the studio, I never literally saw the guys because I was ensconced in the girl land. And so we keep the girls in the green room until the show. Then I would take the two girls for the first show. I'd walk them out on stage, show them, where they're going to stand and such. And, we'd have marks on stage, on where to go, but John Dorsey was smart enough not to shoot down and show the marks. And that was pretty easy. So I would take the two girls for both, parts of the show. There were always two dates on each show. Sometimes we had bachelors, but more often asking we call them 3 girl games back then. We a regular show and then a 3 girl game were batch. But the bachelors would not almost. In every case, they would be a celebrity. It was rare, if ever, that we just had a bachelor ask. Anyway, so I'd have the two girls in, and I'd obviously have to spend more time with the first girl because she's going out on stage in about 8 minutes, but I couldn't negate the other girl who was there that I would then spend the next 15 minutes with. So, I'd be talking to both girls and we'd be going over the questions and, they would ask me all the questions and I would answer. So I give them like 6 answers and different kind of answers. And they would make little notes because luckily through my answers, that would get them to think of, I know, if somebody says something like that, or we would rewrite their question a little bit. And the questions were as silly as, if I was a horn, how would you blow me? Or how would I blow you rather, switch. They were all sexual in nature of sorts, or, just how do you spell relief? One guy came out with FART and that got a laugh. And because again, the guys were terrific. Again, we had more comics than anything else. And the girls were the hosts of the show. Nobody really realizes this. I haven't even mentioned Jim Lang because Jim, Bob I knew very, very well. Plus, Bob invited us to his ranch a lot. He had a huge ranch in Santa Ynez. He owned quarter horses, and he would invite us up for art shows and stuff. He is a very social person. Jim, on the other hand, more reserved, nice guy, but he had to wear a tuxedo. I still don't know why for our version of the show. And Jim's part on the show was, introducing the show, and then we've got 3 bachelors to meet, and here they are. Here's bachelor 1, bachelor 2, bachelor, and then it's up to the girl comes out, and now she's the host of the show. Okay, and luckily she had all the questions, but for the first bachelorette, that is, I'd be there with her until the show started, but now I got to go back into the isolation booth because the second girl is waiting for me. And I would purposely be more flirtatious to the second girl because I had not spent as much time with her on the first one. And I wanted her to feel more, we always save the better girl for the second half of the show because, you're the climax of the show, which was not true, but it sounds good, so I would have to do all that kind of stuff. And again, now it's just the 2 of us in there. Occasionally I put my arm around her, which would get me fired today. But again, it was a different time. Honestly, we were just not as smart as the people today in terms of, how of the things that you should not really be doing and that we did because people think of the 60s as, the 60s, that was a crazy, but Woodstock was, I think, 69. Yeah. So, after Woodstock, that's when we were growing our hair long and doing the bell-bottom thing and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so the dating game girl, number 1, the first dating game girl would be almost done. They would knock on my door. So I'd leave dating game girl number 2 for a second because the first date was over. I'd have to run on stage. Why? Because she would then possibly look out in the audience. If she had a friend in the audience, they might put up, where's the camera? a number and pick number 3 or, pick whoever. So I would be a blocker. I would talk to the girl. She's looking directly at me and I make sure that she couldn't see the audience. I'd also remind her, I say, I don't want to know, but whoever you pick, have a reason for, why you picked them. The last thing I want to hear is, well, who's it going to be? Bachelor number 1, bachelor number 2, or bachelor number 3? Judy, who's it going to be? Bachelor number 2. Why'd you pick bachelor number 2? 2's my lucky number.
Yeah.
No. And it did happen once, even though I told them a zillion times. Yeah, one girl in all the episodes did do that, but I would always, and they would do their best. A lot of times, I'll say maybe a third of the times they would mess up. It's tough. I mean, for anybody, even if you're a professional. These are all 20-year-old, 20-something people for the most part. Occasionally we'd have older people, but to be on TV, usually for the first time in your life, interview 3 guys you don't see and remember who answered what. Generally, they would remember one specific answer from the one bachelor and base it on that. But again, it depended on the girl. But that was my last briefing note. Always, always have a reason. I'm sorry, I'm lying to you. That wasn't my last briefing note. At the very end of the show, so, I go back, I spend more time with the second girl. I come out for the second girl, same thing on blocker panel. Unlike Newlywed Game, Jim Lang and I did nothing for the audiences. I would entertain the audience with Johnny Jacobs. Jim, not so much. Jim
wasn't a performer type.
No, yeah, not at all. Which is why when Jim Lang went on to host Newlywed Game later, I was kind of shocked because he didn't have not only the experience. I didn't know if he had the emotional
connection.
Yeah, connection. Very good word. With these people that Bob would have. I mean, Bob would, during the course of the show, Bob would either get close to somebody or even make somewhat of an enemy of a person if, he whatever suited that personality,
inserted
Bob,
himself.
Yes, thank you. Why don't you interview yourself since you're coming up with the much better answers than
Okay.
I. Yes, well said. I mean, Bob was the master. But again, Jim didn't have that much to do. So the last thing I had to do on that show was get him to dance. I mean, the kiss was not a problem. I had to write all the stupid kisses, though. I mean, for some reason.
How do you write a kiss?
Yeah, I know. Well, it had to be some kind of an aloha kiss, a chocolate kiss, an emotional. It didn't matter what the hell it was, but they had to superimpose some kind of kiss. With the Newlywed Game, couples, it was always take your card, put it to the left. Take your card, put it to the left. With the dating game girls and guys, kiss with the right hand, because all you needed was one person doing it that way, and I'd have to reshoot it. So dating game kiss. But the problem was, and you'd think, do they really do that? And it's like, yeah, you have to dance at the end of the show. Okay. So Jim will say, see you next time on the dating game. Let's throw the kiss, guy. They throw the kiss, and Jim's doing his little dance in the middle. And the other couples, whether they liked each other or not, they're being forced to dance. And if they're not, I'm yelling at them because the music's loud and I'm not Mike. It's like, no, come on, you got to dance. But that was tough because nobody wanted to dance at the end of the show, especially if they didn't like the date they picked, which happened a lot. So we'll stick with the dating game prize situation, since I mentioned, did I? No, I don't think I did. I started the Newlywed Game, but I didn't. Well, I kind of did. I mean, again,
You got most of the Newlywed Game.
Yeah, Newlywed Game. Again, the prizes were selected, not especially for them. They would circle 3 out of 20. I think I mentioned that.
Yeah.
But that's how we picked 3. I'm sorry. For Newlywed Game, we picked 4 couples that all selected the bedroom prize as one of their prizes, and that's how on Newlywed Game it was a prize chosen especially for them, it was especially for all 4 couples because they had selected it when they first did that. Okay. Dating Game, on the other hand, was a total surprise. And what surprised me as not producer yet, I would produce the second season, was how few wanted to go on the dates. Not because they didn't like the person, they barely knew the person, but really they came on the show to get exposure. Again, most of the girls were actresses, models. Nobody really went on the dating game to go on a date. If you wanted to go on a date, you go to a bar, you go to a dance club, you go somewhere, a friend hooks you up. You don't go on a TV show for a date. Anyway.
Prizes on the dating game.
Prize on the dating game. Ranged from local dates, and of course, part of my briefing was, which I didn't mention, whatever the prize is, I said this to newlyweds too, but more so to the dating game. You're going all the way to the parking lot. I want you to get excited. It's like you're going to Saturn, okay? I want you getting excited wherever you're going, because a lot of the, certainly first season, a lot of them were local prizes. You're going, the way it was phrased was, you're going for a night on the town. It was such a horrible way to phrase it, but I swear to God, that's what it is. A night on the town, cutaway. Dorsey immediately, went to the bride. That's right. You'll be going to this restaurant. Okay. After that, you'll be going on a tour of Universal Studios or whatever, and by the time we cut back to them, they're making the smile sound, whatever, we get them off stage. So what happened though, people always ask me, yesterday, people say, well, what happened right after the show? I would hand off the couple to a contestant coordinator who then handed them to the prize people, because whenever any game show is over, first thing you got to take care of is just business. And that's signing papers for your prizes. And the way it worked on Dating Game was we gave them 3 choices of potential times that they wanted to go on the date. Let's say they were going to Santa Fe, okay? And it's a 2.5-day, 3-day trip, whatever, okay, we give them time, they go home. Okay, I could do it October 3rd, you can't, or they would blatantly say, I don't want to go on the date. What we had to do, for obviously rational reasons, we had to chaperone the dates. There was no way you could just take some arbitrary guy, an arbitrary girl, and send them to Scottsdale, Arizona, which was one of the dates that I chaperoned. So we always said to chaperone. The way it worked at Chuck Barris, the higher you were on the totem pole, the better options you had to go on a great date. For example, Chuck's secretary, Susanna, if it was London, England, Susanna's going to or Loretta Strickland, who was one of the producers and a good friend of mine. She AP'd a bunch of shows for me. She went all over the place. My first date that I chaperoned was Debbie Dutch, great girl, I don't mind saying her name. She's a screen queen, good friend. I never dated her, but we went to Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and I'd never been. So, and I chaperoned, I don't know, probably a dozen dates, and they're just free trips. It was great because usually the guys didn't go. I'd have a room to myself. The girl would have a room to herself. We do stuff together or we wouldn't. And yeah, it was fabulous. And I had no idea that was up and coming. So that was it. Dating Game, pretty straightforward, first season. But, the problem then became doing second season of Newlywed Game and the overlap of Dating Game while we were doing Newlywed Game. Second season of Newlywed Game, pretty much the same thing. We did not change the 1 out of 18. It was still tough. We were getting more couples in and we were working later hours.
More applicants
on the air and we're getting people. But again, the problem with all of our shows was they're all LA people. If we got people from Orange County, which is the next county down from us, about an hour and a half drive, I guess, we'd be thrilled to get Orange County people, but nobody flew in from Ohio for an audition to be on the Newlywed Game to get a bed or a chest of drawers. So that was the only limitation of the show, which nobody cares about except we as producers, we wanted more of a mix, more variety. And certainly, and the good news too, with the second season, though, we did start to get more ethnicities because we had a wider pool. And that was great because other game shows really didn't, it was a very white world still in the 70s. So there was no reason for it. It was kind of ridiculous. But yeah, so we did second season of Newlywed Game, and then while we're doing the second season of Newlywed Game, Dating Game gets picked up for a second season, and Mike and Steve were just overwhelmed, so they made me producer, and Larry likewise. We both got producer credit. Once again, Larry'd be in charge of the guys, and Larry would be writing more questions than me because, again, I'm a fiction writer. I didn't like writing the questions. Larry did. So Larry was writing questions, and I was responsible for matching up contestants and being more hands-on, being more personable, perhaps, than Larry. Larry was a quieter guy than I. Yeah, so I got producer credit, and the only difference between being the producer second season was being responsible for what they said, and God bless him, Dennis Rosenblatt, terrific director. He's directing Penn and Teller, I think, still. And Dennis was our AD. I've known Dennis a zillion years. He directed Couch Potatoes, which was a show I sold, which I guess we'll get to if my battery doesn't die. And Dennis would sit there because you always want to run the show to time, okay? Back then, syndication was 22 minutes and 40 seconds for a half-hour show, okay? So as I told you, for the second date, I'd be in the isolation booth with the girl, okay? And then again, I'm on stage being blocker. It's now the end of the show, okay? And she's going to pick bachelor number 2, okay? But prior to that, I'm in the booth deciding when to end the game, okay? So she's out on stage. She's asking the questions. This is for, forgive me if I'm not being clear. Second girl on stage asking the questions, okay? And we're running out of time. Dennis, who's at the booth, he's waiting for me to say, this is my big moment. End the game, which would be ba ba da 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 ba, at which point Jim said, okay, that's it for the day. But I always wanted to end on a laugh. So Dennis, he didn't want to edit the show. So I'm sitting there waiting for a laugh, and I'm praying, and Dennis is getting mad, and he's just like looking at me, and it's like, it's coming. And he did, every time I'm doing this, he said, more editing. End the game. Da, 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 da. And Dennis was so, because again, I'm 24 at this point, and I'm producing a show, and last thing I'm thinking about are costs of editing. But that was it. So as soon as they say end the game, Jim now had to wrap it up. I would run from the booth back on stage, because that's when then again I had to play blocker for
the Bachelorette to pick.
Not to pick, yeah. Whew, God, I'm sorry, this was a long time ago. And yeah, that was it. What else can I tell you about Dating Game other than again, we just had some wonderful guys, some fabulous girls. I mean, and because we were syndicated, I mean, we had a porno queen on. Her name is Felice. No, not Felice. No, Kitten Navidad. She was a porno actress, and
she was billed as such on the program.
No, we just called her sexy for sexy. Okay. And she must have prepped this. She was very well endowed, and she must have known ahead of time who she was going to pick. It was still one of the funniest moments to me. Okay, she's wearing a very tight-fitting outfit, and Jim says, well, which bachelor will it be? Bachelor number 1, bachelor number 2, or bachelor number 3? And she went, bachelor number 2. And she swung her body, and they heaved. And she must have set it up. Maybe it was spur of the moment, but it was the funniest selection I'd ever seen. Where I screwed up on Dating Game, I guess Larry and I, for whatever reasons, we were kids. Chuck never came down to this show. Chuck, again, he was so involved with Gong Show and Beauty Show was coming on. Again, he's hosting, he's producing, he's trying to pick the best acts because the show, Gong Show was doing very well in the ratings. And he trusted Michael Metzger and Steve Friedman implicitly, explicitly. He trusted them. Larry and I shouldn't have trusted us so much because this one show, girl's name was Terry. We picked two great looking guys who had adequate personalities. And we had great success with little people on the Newlywed Game because again, we wanted all sorts of ethnicities, but little people were not on game shows. You didn't see, let's make a deal. I don't remember, maybe they did. I don't remember, come on down with little people being on the show. And people are people. So we have this great guy, he's an actor, his name is Cork Hubbard, has had a very, very successful career. His name was Corky at the time. And so Corky was number 2, and he's very funny. And we thought this was a good idea. So she picks batch number 2, sure enough. And batch number 1 comes out, big 6-foot guy. Oh, handsome. Okay. Oh, you didn't pick him. Batch number 3. Oh, sorry, you didn't pick him. Here's the batch you did pick, batch number 2. Cork comes out. The girl starts crying. It was the worst moment in my career because I actually hurt somebody. I mean, I hurt this girl's feelings. Guy was a nice guy, but this girl wanted a handsome guy, or she thought we were making fun of her, which we weren't, or whatever. It was just us being kids, and which you shouldn't be as a producer of a television show. But yeah, that was my, and Chuck fined me $2. Chuck every day would come out, this is just a Chuck Barris thing. He would hand out, everybody would get a flyer, $2 for good booking on Three's a Crowd, $3 for parking too close to my car, deducted, things like that. Again, Chuck, great guy.